Many Star Trek episodes found their roots in great works of literature. Obsession borrowed from Moby Dick and took Kirk on a relentless chase across the galaxy after a killer life form, much as Ahab pursued the white whale across the ocean. Another episode, Conscience of the King, contains elements right from Hamlet and Julius Caesar. The title of this one, Dagger of the Mind, is taken from Macbeth. It's been a long time since I've done Shakespeare, but let me take a stab at it. Is this a dagger which I see before me? The handle toward my hand. Come, let me clutch thee. I have thee not, and yet I see thee still. Art thou not fatal vision, sensible to feeling as to sight? Or art thou but a dagger of the mind, a false creation proceeding from the heat-oppressed brain? Let's take a journey to Tantalus 5, an advanced penal colony where the mind can be the cruelest prison of all. Having trouble, gentlemen?
I just don't understand the problem, sir.
You're beaming cargo down to a penal colony, Mr. Berkeley.
Their security force field, sir.
I had a conversation with my friend D. Kelly about this about 3 or 4 months ago. And I said to him, people are asking me constantly, they must be asking you the same question. How come we've lasted so long? How come showing on the air in 1966 and we're still doing Star Trek, we're still talking about Star Trek, we're still seeing Star Trek, and how come we've lasted so long?
Interesting. The Earth people glorify organized violence for 40 centuries, but you imprison those who employ it privately.
Forward scanner to bridge.
And of course, your people found an answer. You're disposed of emotion, Doctor.
Negative.
Where there's no emotion, there's no motive for violence.
When I answer these questions, I think about the themes of the show, I think about the subject matter, I think about the fact that it's in the future, so it's not dated.
It will not affect you, Dr. McCoy. Only the person I touch. It is not hypnosis.
I understand.
Much of the science is still happening. I think that we appeal to various generations because little kids can watch the show and enjoy it because there's action, there's monsters, and there's spaceships.
Mr. Spock, the force field is gone. I can send you right to the source of the interruption.
Get some security people and follow me down.
Energize.
And the same person sees the shows maybe 6 or 8 or 10 years later and suddenly becomes conscious of other values in the shows that they might not have been conscious of when they were little kids, so they can revisit the shows comfortably.
Emergency channel D.
It's no good, Mr. Spock. I can't break through their force field.
Keep trying.
I think about all those things, and I talk about those things, and Dee said to me, you know why we lasted so long, Leonard? I said, why? I said, because we were good.
This episode contains references from Greek mythology. The planet is named Tantalus 5. Tantalus was a king condemned to Hades for his crimes. His punishment was to stand in water that receded when he got thirsty and tried to drink it. The fruit that hung above his head also moved away when he got hungry and tried to eat it. Lethe, the prison inmate, who had forgotten her past criminal life, is named for the river of forgetfulness, one of the 5 rivers in Hades. And that's our mythology lesson for today.
Well, the relationship between Rand and Kirk was like Kitty and Matt Dillon, and it was not a consummated relationship. It was supposedly an unrequited one in that Captain Kirk was in love with the Enterprise. This was his woman.
When I get my hands on the headquarters genius that assigned me a female yeoman.
What's the matter, Jim? Don't you trust yourself?
I've already got a female to worry about. Her name's the Enterprise.
And I was supposedly and was crazy about him, and I was always trying to get him to notice me, to give me more, and he was torn. Dagger of the Mind was written for Rand, where she was supposed to have met him at a Christmas party, and actually they did make love in that episode, and that was never done. They put another girl in there. They put a Dr. Noel in there.
Dr. Helen Noel, Captain. We've met?
And because they just didn't want the consummation of the relationship with Kirk and Rand, because Kirk was going out on other planets and having other relationships with other women, and it would just look really bad for Kirk.
This isn't right, Captain.
If he were going with another woman, how would Rand feel, you know? And yet Gene Roddenberry told me, if he'd have left me on board and didn't allow them to take the character out, that I could have been standing there with a frying pan.
You don't mind if I come to your cabin later?
No, sir. It would be an interesting dynamic, because I would be the woman who really knew him.
Thank you, Yola.
Loneliness for James Kirk is part of being in command of a starship. He speaks of it in this episode, and he also spoke of it in The Naked Time. In Dagger of the Mind, we've explored not only Tantalus 5, but the human imagination. Our minds give us the power to create and destroy, and the power to build our own walls of loneliness.
Next week on Star Trek, the Sci-Fi Channel Special Edition.
Fire main bases.
The Enterprise discovers the First Federation. Mr. Spock on trial.
Guilty as charged.
The classic two-part episode, The Menagerie, and the Romulans make their first appearance. Plus, see the infamous Orion slave girl, as you've never seen her before.
Double red alert.
Star Trek, the Sci-Fi Channel Special Edition. All next week at 7:30 and 11:30 p.m. Eastern.
There are psychiatrists who use a technique called post-hypnotic suggestion. By using this technique, subtle behavior modifications can be reinforced into a patient's subconscious. These suggestions can help alleviate cravings for cigarettes, they can lessen a fear of flying, or accomplish any number of helpful therapies. Yet, some unscrupulous psychiatrists may have used these tools against their patients. They may have implanted false memories and convinced their patients that they were remembering repressed experiences that never really happened. It's apparent that our minds are vulnerable to suggestion. Now, what if someone with much darker purposes could plant a suggestion directly into your brain? A suggestion so strong that you are powerless to resist. A suggestion that is so real and so deadly that it is a dagger of the mind. In the original script, Van Gelder was simply interrogated by Spock in sickbay. In order to make the scene more dramatic, Gene Roddenberry created the idea of the Vulcan mind meld. I've always felt that later in the series, a mind meld was sometimes used as an easy solution to a story problem, rather than the very personal and dangerous procedure that it was implied to be here. One notable exception was the mind meld with the Horta in The Devil in the Dark. But that's a story for another time. The play, Equus, by Peter Shaffer, makes an interesting comment about the power of psychiatry. Shaffer suggests that the psychiatrist's profession requires him to normalize his patients, normal being society's vision of itself. He goes on to argue that by making a patient normal, he removes that patient's passion and, in a sense, his individuality. There's no doubt that many people have been truly helped by psychiatry and psychoanalysis, but the brain is complex. We may never fully understand its inner workings, and perhaps we shouldn't. With knowledge comes power, and power over other people's minds can be a disquieting proposition.